On this episode of Carnage, it is time to make the ute run. So, time has passed and progress has been made, but not as much as I'd like because, as the old saying goes, everything takes longer and costs more than you think. So, I've made some progress on the interior there. Let's have a look. Okay, so last time you saw us, we test fitted the carpet. Well, now I have trimmed the carpet. I haven't put all the seat belts and stuff in yet, just in case we need to move things. I haven't fully trimmed the sides, but I've also carpeted the back wall and I've put insulation all the way up the back of the firewall, so she sounds nice and solid. And then we've got our little flap there. But yeah, it all looks very nice and tidy in here now, and when the seats are in, this thing will look awesome. But I want to get this thing at least fired up this video, so let's talk about that. So we've already tested the starter, we know that works, but as you can see, I'm back to to-do list. So this is the what the car needs to be done list. This is going to be what the car needs to actually start list. You know what they say about eating an elephant? You take one bite at a time. Well, that's what this is about. Let's take this bite before we consume the whole thing. So basically this is all about what I need to do to actually hit the key and get it to fire. And I'm already thinking there's some stuff I have to add to this list. So anyway, let's start working our way down this list so we can actually hear this thing run in this video. That'd be good. So I'm going to start off by taking this pseudo intake pipe off. It's not the intake pipe, it's not going to be the intake pipe. The car has to go back to MPW, so we can do things like, you may have noticed there's no wastegates on the car and there's no intake pipe. These are all things that need to be sorted, but it doesn't need wastegates to run. It doesn't need an intake pipe to run. Sure, it needs an intake pipe to make boost, but not to run. This was all stuff done for Motorex. We'll take that off. Oh, these are these new ProFlow boost clamps, well, hose clamps. They are double ribbed for your pleasure and holding things on and together. Let's keep moving on. If I had a coil loom to suit these ProFlow coils, I could use them to start it up just initially, but I don't. So let's put the Haltech coils on there and we'll go with that. So I'm just going to lift the manifold off up for the moment and screw in this little compact fitting, which should fit under here fine, but you just can't screw it in with the manifold in place. Get an Allen key on that. Oh, that should sit down fine. So that fitting in the valley is going to be our return fitting for our scavenge pump. So for those that aren't aware, we've got to run a scavenge pump because our turbos are quite low and turbos need to drain into the oil system of the car. Well, we can't do that because they sort of drain out lower than the sump. So they will drain out into two big lines that go to the scavenge pump, and then the scavenge pump is going to pump it up into that valley plate. Is it the right way to do it? I think it's going to work. Some people on the net have said they've done it and it seems to work fine. So we're going to give that a try. What's the worst that can happen? You know, worst that can happen is we have to do something else, like pull the sump off and do it into the sump, which I'm trying to prevent at the moment. But anyway, we'll see how we go. All right, moving on. Manifold needs to be tightened back up again. So we're slowly making progress working down our list. I have all the fuel line stuff done now. Actually, yeah, all the fuel stuff, all the fuel lines are all done for the whole car now, which is great. So the system is, if you're just tuning in, we have a 340 litre per hour pump in the VU fuel tank that we've retrofitted into the car. That will feed the surge pot and keep that full. In the surge pot, we have 3 Hellcat pumps. Only one of them will be running all the time. So one will be running the engine all the time. And that's the pump I've got hooked up just for the moment. I haven't hooked up the secondaries yet because it won't need the secondaries to start. But I will hook them up shortly. Well, let's do a start test first. I've got dash 10 feeding to the reg at the front of the car. Dash 8 coming back on a return, which feeds back up under the car and into our surge pot, and then a overflow running to the tank. And I'm using ProFlow quick connect fittings on the actual factory fuel pot. Yeah, so things have been happening. I've been wiring and doing little buzz tests, and I'll show you what I mean about that in a sec. But yeah, we're getting close. One of the big hold-ups right now is I'm just waiting on some fittings so I can finish up our turbo oil feed lines. I need some dash 4s for that. And yeah, once I've got them, then the oil side of things should be fully sealed. And once I've got the fuel side, well, which already is, the fuel side sealed, get that oil side sealed. Once that's all done, we can actually have a fair dinkum go at trying to start this. So now I'm going to show you the buzz test. So at the moment, I only have the Hellcat pump hooked up to the ECU. And I hit the ignition key and you'll hear the throttle body click as well. And you can hear the pump buzzing back there. All right, so that's buzz test number 1. Then we have our wire. Now, if anyone's watched the Lexan build, you know I like to loosely wire stuff first, make sure I've got all the connections right, and then I go through and fix it later. And I know from the Lexan build that this green-white wire is the trigger wire for the relay for our fuel pump. So I'll plug that onto there, and you will hear the second pump buzzing because it is a fair bit louder than the other one. Loud pump buzzing. All right, I don't like to run them too long without fuel in it. So that's one of the next things I've got to do is go get some E85, put about 20 litres in the tank, and then do a fuel leak test. Make sure all the fittings are nipped up tight and we're not spraying fuel everywhere. And from there, I've just got a couple more wires to run, and like I said, turbo oil line feeds, and yeah, we're nearly good to go. Well, we have been very busy in the workshop, working the list, doing lots of plumbing, lots of wiring, and getting this thing very close to firing it up. I have put 20 litres of E85 in there, and I've done some fuel pump tests to make sure there is no leaks. There was 1 or 2, but we've sorted them out. I've wired up things like our scavenge pump at the front. We've done our turbo oil line plumbing. I've wired up our thermo fan in the back for the trans fan, stuff like that. And this is where this Nexus ECU really comes into play. The R5 is awesome for all the things we've already talked about, but more specifically because it is a power distribution module as well. So you can run things without having to add a whole bunch of relays to the car. It has all this stuff built into the ECU, and it is like, it has a circuit breaker in every circuit as well, like all those power distribution circuits. So we can run things like the scavenge pump straight off the ECU, and if we happen to get a dead short, it will trip at the ECU. It won't cut the ECU out, it won't burn the ECU out, it'll just trip it. If it's like a high current draw situation where it's just under more severe load and it just sort of tripped the circuit, it will retry the circuit at a predetermined time that you've already put in the ECU. It'll do a number of those tests over and over until it gets to the point where it goes, you know what, there's something wrong here, and it'll just bring up an alarm on the dash. So that's how good these things are. So what I'm going to do now is trigger. I've set it up so, because the scavenge pump should only run while the engine's running. Obviously the engine's not running right now. So what I've done is I've set it up that when I trigger the reset of the ECU, it will trigger the fuel pressure, and that will trigger the scavenge pump. So we can just test that it works. And here we go. Oh, let's do that. Scavenge pump, only for a couple seconds. All right, so we don't want to run it dry for too long. So it sensed there was fuel pressure in the system and it triggered that. Obviously we will set it up to trigger off the engine running when we're ready to do that. I'll do the same thing with the trans fan up the back. Let me just unplug and plug. All right, so do a reset. Trans fan running up the back of the car. Again, powers off because it sees the fuel pressure go away. So yeah, these things are working, and it is really easy to wire up with this. So basically you got two wires from each device. Well, one wire goes to earth and the other wire goes to ECU, to what we've already basically assigned it to. And the beauty is the ECU will tell you how many amps each of those things draw as well. So right now, if I reset that now, fan is running and it is drawing 3.5 amps basically. So as you saw there, it shows you exactly how many amps it's drawing. So 3.5 amps for that fan is not going to trip that 8 amp trigger. And yeah, that's as simple as it is. It's just so easy to do. Right, so we have some ProFlow leads here. There's a cut to size, cut to length. They come with 90s and straights on them, so you can basically work out what it is you need. There's certainly plenty of length there. Alrighty. Just going to mark that and check to see if they're going to be the same length, and if they are, then I know I can make up a bunch like that, and then we'll check the other side. Oh, pretty close, because that's cut it there, then trim it back to there. Just 7 more of those. So all we need now is some vacuum lines for our brake booster and map sensor and stuff like that. Fuel reg, all that sort of stuff. Very simple. So in the back of our billet manifold there are 3 1/8 MPT ports and 1 1/4 MPT. So we're just got to make sure we put them in the right holes. Put that. Now we've got our brake booster hose. Our ProFlow make a nice billet fitting to go into your brake booster. We've got a one-way valve in there, so it'll allow vacuum to flow that way, but not, allow it to vacuum but not boost, if you know what I mean. So, vacuum goes that way, boost goes that way. So, allows vacuum but doesn't allow boost. That's how it works. Another one bites the dust. It's actually everything. I mean, there's add trans fluid, which we can and will add a little bit, but it's not like we're engaging the transmission. Now, I need to prime the oil system. I'll show you how to do that shortly. And then put in all the data for the engine. So I'm going to have to hook into the engine and put in some stuff. So coil settings and that sort of thing. But yeah, prime the engine with oil. We'll be ready to start this thing very shortly. So now we're going to prime the engine with oil. Back in the day when engines had dizzies and carbies and all that sort of stuff, you just pulled the dizzy out in the dizzy drive, put a shaft down there, spun it up, pressurise the engine, Bob's your uncle. Well, LS engines being modern and all that stuff means they don't have dizzies and they don't have oil pump drives and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to use a weed sprayer and this fitting to prime our engine. So in the side of the block, up near the front of the LS, even the factory LSs have them, is a oil passage block off plug. So basically it doesn't block the passage, but it blocks oil from coming out of the engine. So we're going to insert this into the side of the engine, put oil in this. Now this has been modified slightly. I've put a tubeless valve there so I can pressurize this, and once I pressurize this, once it's got oil in it, it will just push the oil straight into the engine and we'll be able to see it on the Haltech. So yeah, this should go pretty easy. So I'm going to chuck a few litres in this bottle. It holds 5. I won't need 5, but we'll need a couple because the oil filter's empty, all the lines are empty, all the galleries are empty, everything is empty, so we need it not empty. So we've got oil in our can, we've got our pressure line here. Now, don't go blasting it with 100 PSI, it ain't gonna handle that. But it will handle probably 30, pretty safe. So I'm going to apply pressure, and as soon as I do, oil's gonna start flowing into the engine. All right. And we're just going to let that feed into the engine. Hopefully we're not going to find any leaks. It will take a little bit of a while. It has to kind of find its way. And we will hear some air bubbling, I imagine. So we have preloaded the engine with oil. It took all the oil. We've already done a test in that we removed one of the turbo feed lines. It has oil in it, which it did not have before. So there's definitely oil in the system. So now I'm just going to remove our fitting and get the proper fitting back in there. And then we can try and fire this up. All right, so we're very close to startup. I know I've been saying that for a little bit now, but we are just checking the throttle body calibration. So it's got a drive-by-wire pedal in it, drive-by-wire throttle body. I'm going to hit calibrate here. We've already done the 0 and 100, but we're going to do the full calibration dance right now. All right, we're all greens. Okay, so let's erase the alarms that we've had. Now there are no alarms. Okay, it says we don't have brake pedal switch, that's fine. That's fine. So the last operation before I kick this in the guts is, well, I've got to plug in the coils. I plugged in the coils to plug in the main harness to the coils, but I also want to do a final adjustment on this fuel pressure. So I've set up the prime time for 30 seconds. So now it's running, and the fuel pressure, bring it up, bring it up. Just aiming for 58. There we go. Lock it. That is the fuel pressure it is expecting. I think it's time. All right, let's try this. Don't need to worry about if it's in gear because it doesn't have a tail shaft. When you know it, the battery's flat. Ah! Okay, let's try this. Sounds like it's got more power. It's running. Let's try pre-pump prime again. Might need a little bit of pedal. Oh, wrong pedal for starters. It's running! It's running! Okay, so it starts. Okay, it's also spat something everywhere here. I don't know what that is. But we made it run. That's a start. Obviously the car is not finished, but we have made it run, and that's what we promised to do this episode. So I guess now we need to finish it off properly. Get it all finished, get it done, get it on the dyno, get it at the track. But all that's going to happen on future episodes of Carnage.